லைக் a ஸ்டோரி. ஒரு நாள் ஒரு குழந்தை அவங்க பக்கத்து வீட்டில் விளையாடிட்டு வரத்துக்கு ரொம்ப நேரம் ஆயிடுச்சு. அந்த குழந்தை விளையாடிட்டு வந்தோடனே அவங்க அப்பா கேட்டார், ஏம்மா இன்னைக்கு ரொம்ப நேரம் ஆயிடுச்சு, ரொம்ப ஜாலியாக விளையாடிட்டு இருந்தீங்களா, என்னாச்சு, எப்பவும் சீக்கிரம் விளையாடிட்டு வந்துடுவீங்களே, படிக்கிறது டைம் ஆச்சு, ஏன் வரத்துக்கு இவ்வளோ நேரம் ஆச்சுன்னு கேட்டார். அதுக்கு அந்த குழந்தை சொல்லிச்சு, என்னோடய ஃப்ரெண்டு அவருடைய பொம்மையை உடச்சிட்டா, அதனால் நான் வரதுக்கு லேட் ஆகிடுச்சு அப்படின்னு சொன்னான். அவங்க அப்பா கேட்டார், பொம்மையை உடச்சிட்டாளா, ஏன் என்னாச்சு? இல்லை, நாங்கள் விளையாடிட்டு இருக்கும்போது பொம்மை உடஞ்சிருச்சு. யார், நீ உடச்சியா? இல்லை, நான் உடைக்கல, அப்படியே தான் கீழே போட்டு உடச்சிட்டா அப்படின்னு சொன்னான். அப்போ நீ என்ன பண்ண, உடஞ்ச பொம்மையை ஒட்ட வச்சுட்டு வரதுக்கு லேட் ஆகிடுச்சா, எதுக்கு இவ்வளோ நேரம் ஆச்சு அப்படின்னு அவங்க அப்பா கேட்டதுக்கு அந்த பொண்ணு சொல்லிச்சு, இல்லை, அவள் அழுதுட்டு இருந்தா அப்படின்னு. அதுக்கு நீ என்ன பண்ண, அவனுக்கு ஆறுதல் சொன்னியா, அதனால லேட் ஆகிடுச்சா வரத்துக்கு அப்படின்னு கேட்டார். இல்லை, அவள் அழுதுட்டு இருந்தா, அவள் அழுறதுக்கு நான் ஹெல்ப் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தேன் அப்படின்னு சொன்னா குழந்தை. தட்ஸ் ரைட். சம்டைம்ஸ் நம்ம பெருசாக ஒன்றும் பண்ண வேண்டாம். மற்றவங்க தேவையில் இருக்கும் பொழுது, கஷ்டத்தில் இருக்கும் பொழுது அவங்களோட கூட நம்ம இருந்தால் போதும். லைஃப் இஸ் வெரி மச் லைக் a story. Have a great weekend. Like a story? Mr. and Mrs. Matka were celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary, and suddenly an angel appeared before them and was ready to grant them any wish that they had. Mrs. Matka was very quick. She said, I want a ticket for the world tour. And there it was, her ticket, round-trip ticket for a world tour. And it was Mr. Matka's turn. And he said, he is a bit mischievous, Mr. Matka. He said, turn my wife 30 years younger. And there it was. Mr. Matka was instantly 90 years old. Wow, he didn't expect that. Be mindful of what you're asking. Be mindful of the choice of words that you use. Who knows how you'll be interpreted, regardless of whether you're at home, office, or elsewhere. Life is very much like a story. Like a story? In a monastery, the master and the disciples meditated every evening. And in the same monastery, there was a cat. And every time they started their meditation, the cat used to make a lot of noise catching rats. So the master instructed them very clearly that before the meditation started, the cat be tied to a pole so that it does not disturb their meditation. After a few years, the master passed away. But the practice of tying the cat continued as the master instructed. After a few years, the cat died too. And you know what the disciples did? They went out, paid a huge price and bought a new cat and tied it to the pole before they started their everyday meditation, just like the master ordered them to do. We seem to have affinity towards two things. Number one, missing the point. And number two, displaced sense of importance. Life is very much like a story. Like a story? Here was this old woman after the war. She was very grateful and thankful that God heard her prayers. After the war, she said, God, thank you for listening to my prayers and protecting me and our village and making all the bombs drop in my neighboring village. How shallow or how deep is your religion? Or how shallow or how deep are your religious practices? What kind of God would that be? A God who listens to your prayer and making all the bombs fall in your neighboring village? Life is very much like a story. Like a story? Once there was this group of college students who went to a village for a social service camp. And when they went, they were instructed clearly they got to return back from the village by 6 o'clock, or else they will miss the last bus and there is no other transportation in that village. But highly enthusiastic college students forgot about this instruction, and they went ahead and helped the villagers in so many different ways, and they missed the last bus. And there's a small little tiny village, and there are no restaurants in that village. So they were forced to stay back in the village, but they didn't know what to do because there are no restaurants. And they requested one of the villagers to prepare some food for all of them, and that they'll pay whatever it takes. And the villager was happy to serve these young students a good meal. And as they were eating their dinner, one of the students fed a stray dog that was roaming around. The next day morning, everyone got up and they were getting ready to go back to their own city. And one of the villagers came and told them, "The dog you fed last night, it died." And the students were panic-stricken. They thought something must have been wrong with the food that has been served. They had all kinds of thoughts in their head. They said, "Oh my God, we shouldn't have made this mistake. These villagers, they are not clean. They don't have any sense of hygiene. There must have been something wrong with the way the food was prepared." And each one of them had their own thoughts about the quality of the food that was served to them. So they traveled back to their city with great fear. And each one of them started developing several symptoms. Some of them had vomiting, some of them had stomach upset, and others ran into fevers. And it went on for a few days, and they got the required medical attention. And a few days later, one of the villagers came to the city, and they happened to meet these students, and he was inquiring how they were all doing. And the students narrated the whole story, and they said that there was something wrong with the food that we ate. And the villager asked, "How do you know?" "We know because the dog that we fed the night when we had that food died." "What dog?" asked the villager. "The stray dog," said the students. "The stray dog that was around. When we were having our dinner, we fed a little food from what has been served to us." And the villager laughed and said, "The dog did not die because of the food that you gave. It died because it was hit by a lorry," he said. We often react to the ideas in our head, and we do not respond to reality. Life is very much like a story.
Like a story? Mr. and Mrs. Matka are newly married, and Mrs. Matka is trying to impress her husband by doing whatever it takes. However, it is not easy to please Mr. Matka. One day, Mrs. Matka boils the egg for her husband. "Oh, you boiled the egg? I prefer the egg tossed." And Mrs. Matka was upset. The next day, Mrs. Matka tosses the egg and serves it to her husband. And today, Mr. Matka says, "Oh, it's Tuesday. On Tuesdays, I don't take tossed egg. I like it boiled." Mrs. Matka is totally upset. She doesn't know what to do. She thinks all through the night, and she was wondering how to please her husband. The next day, she wants to make sure her husband is happy and her husband is impressed. She comes with a boiled egg and a tossed egg and puts it before him on the table. Mr. Matka looks at the boiled egg and looks at the tossed egg, and he doesn't know what to say now. But he had to say something, you know. He looked at the boiled egg and says, "You have boiled the wrong egg." Once people make up their mind to find faults, they will always find faults. You cannot build a cocoon and stay inside to protect yourself from such people. You're going to find them wherever you go. They are all over. You make up your mind and tell yourself you're not going to let them discourage you. You're not going to let them trample your dreams. Life is beautiful. Life is full of opportunities. You need to make up your mind. Life is very much like a story. Like a story? Once there was this guru around whom a lot of people gathered, and he was teaching them about God. And as he was talking to them about God, he asked them, "Do you know where is God? Do you know where is God? Do you know where is God?" And the crowd was silent. They didn't have the answers, and that's why they came to him. And no one would dare open their mouth. And suddenly, a little girl raised her hand, and she said, I know, she said. And the entire crowd was startled, and the guru was surprised. The girl knows where's God, and he was curious to know what the girl knows. "Tell me, my dear, where's God?" And the little girl replied, "God is in our toilet." The entire crowd was shocked to hear that, and so was the guru. "What do you mean?" The guru was angry. "What do you mean?" he asked. "What do you mean by saying God is in your toilet?" "Yes, I know God is in our toilet," she said. And the crowd was even more startled. The guru was shocked to hear such a blasphemy. He was angry, but he couldn't show it to the little girl. And the guru mellowed down his voice and asked her, "Tell me, my dear, why are you saying such a thing?" And the girl replied, "I know God is in our toilet. I know for sure. Every day morning, when everyone is busy getting ready to go to work, getting ready to go to school, my dad and mom comes in front of the toilet and shouts, 'Oh God, you're still in there. Oh God, you're still in there.'" The little girl and the family were living in a little crammed house with a single bath and toilet. And all that they had was a single bathroom. And you know what happens in the mornings when everyone is busy? This might come across to you as a little joke, but the question still remains, where is God? We say God is omnipresent, or so we think. If God is omnipresent, then why go to place X, place Y, and place Z? Why cannot an omnipresent God be present in your house, be present in every room of your house? We just need to sometimes listen to ourselves, the religious talks, the God talks that we engage in. There is no rhyme or reason at times. It is all right if there is no rhyme or reason in your God talk, as long as you're not forcing your views down someone's throat. We know the most blood in the planet is shed through religions. Where's God? Life is very much like a story.
Like a story? I would like to take you to a wedding that took place around 2000 years ago in Cana of Galilee. Jesus and his mother Mary were invited to a wedding. In those days, in Jewish culture, a wedding took place for around 7 days, and all the guests have to be served with wine. And as the wedding was progressing, suddenly Mary comes to his son Jesus and says, "Son, the wine is running out." And Jesus looks at his mother and rebuffs her, saying, "O woman, what is there between you and me? What does it consider me?" And interestingly, Mary looks at the servants and says, "Do as he says," and she leaves. And what unfolds after that is even more interesting. Jesus looks at the servants and asks them to fill the 6 jars that were there with water. These were stone jars kept there for Jewish cleansing or purifying ritual. Each stone jar would hold 20 to 30 gallons, and the servants fill the jars to the brim. And once the stone jars are filled with water, Jesus tells the servants to draw from those jars and take it to the head steward. Head steward tastes what has been handed over to them by the servant and was surprised. He looks at the servants and tells them what is wrong with these people. They serve the best wine first, and as the guests get drunk, they serve the inferior wine later. But here, in this case, they have kept the best for the last, and the head steward does not know where the wine came from. Only the servants who drew from the jars knew where the wine came from. This is the first miracle of Jesus reported in the scriptures. This is not about the religious miracle that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to focus on Mary in the story. As per the scriptural text, no one comes to Mary and asks for help. No one comes to Mary and tells her the wine is running out. She notices what is happening around her, and she is sensitive to the needs of the people around her. In those days, running out of wine would be such a great embarrassment to the hosts. And Mary, once she notices what is happening, did not wait to anyone to come to her to ask for help. She takes the initiative and approaches her son, who could actually help the situation. And there happens the miracle, water into wine, the first ever miracle of Jesus reported in the scriptures. We also would have come across so many Marys in our life. Even without being asked for, they come to our aid and support us and help us. All of us, without such Marys in our life, would not be where we are. Let us take a moment to quickly run through our life to list those Marys who have helped us in so many different ways, small and big, so that we are where we are today. And at times, we ourselves have played Marys in our life. If you have, be proud of yourself and pat yourself at the back. Life is very much like a story.
Like a story? Once a young man was very depressed, as every day became nothing but a struggle. Whatever he starts fails. He was not able to handle the failures that were looming in his life one after the other. In this situation, the young man heard about a Zen master, so he thought he'll reach out to the Zen master and look for some answers to his problems and to his depression. The Zen master listened to his story patiently and he just walked away from him. The young man was very confused, but he kept waiting there. After a few minutes, the Zen master came back with a glass of water and salt. The young man was all the more confused. The Zen master asked the young man to take a fistful of salt and drop it into the glass of water and stir it well and drink it. And the young man, without knowing what is happening, just followed the instructions of the Zen master. And the Zen master asked the young man, how did it taste? He said, terrible, I couldn't take it. It's too much, it's too salty, he said. The Zen master took the young man to a lake now and asked the young man to take a fistful of salt and dissolve it in the lake and to stir it well. After doing that, he asked the young man to drink from the lake. The young man took some water from the lake and drank it. Now the Zen master asked the young man, how is it? It tastes good, it's fine, he said. And the Zen master looked at the young man and said, this is life, my dear man. The fistful of salt is the same, no more and no less, but the container to which you add it to
makes all the difference. When you added it to the glass of water, it was terrible, it was too salty. But when you added it to a lake of water, it made no difference to the lake. The water tasted good. How true it is. Life is very much like that. When we contain ourselves in a little glass of water, life becomes too miserable, too much to take. When we don't extend our horizon, every little problem becomes a huge big hurdle. All these little struggles, all these little pains, all these little failures wouldn't matter when we are after a bigger goal, because the goal that we are aspiring to achieve is worth all these struggles, failures, difficulties, disappointments. Life is very much like a story.
Like a story? There are several versions of how Ganesha happened to get his elephant head. Most of you would have already heard about these versions, and most of you probably know how Ganesha happened to have his elephant head. But what connected with me was actually what happened after Ganesha got his elephant head. As he went around with his elephant head and his pot belly, all the deities in Swargalok were teasing him, mocking him, and ridiculing him of his appearance. This made Ganesha very sad, and he wasn't happy at all about what has been happening around him. He went to his parents, Parvati and Shiva, and tells them in a sad voice, "Why did you do this to me? People are ridiculing me of my appearance." Looking at the condition of their son, Shiva and Parvati gave Ganesha a boon. They said, "You will be the remover of obstacles. You will be the one who is first worshipped before any other deities." So they gave him the boon of primacy. This is one of the reasons why people start with a prayer to Ganesha whenever they are starting something new. Ganesha, who was once an object of ridicule, became the first one to be considered, the first one to be thought about, the first one to be asked for help. Whenever people wanted to start something new, whenever people wanted to get rid of all the obstacles in something important that they are doing, and to be successful in their life, and to be successful in their endeavors, we might be ridiculed, we might be mocked, we might be teased. People may make fun of us. People may not give importance to us. People may keep us away from many things. If you too have experienced this, if you too have at any point of time felt that you have been the object of ridicule, if you too have been feeling that you have been left out, then you should know that you are not alone. It happened to Lord Ganesha, and it could happen to any one of us. But life changes. You will receive your boon, and at times the boon comes not through Shiva and Parvati, but through your determination, but through your hard work, but through your ability to focus on your goal with single-minded attention. Life is very much like a story. Happy Ganesh Chaturthi!